There's been some updates on the firing, or I guess departure, of Candace Owens. Ben Shapiro and Candace apparently agreed not to speak about it. And yet, in some recent interviews, Shapiro has been shedding some light into his thinking as to why it was not hypocritical to fire, or at least have, Candace Owens depart his organization, The Daily Wire. Here's what he had to say in an interview with Dave Rubin.
The difference between a publisher like The Daily Wire and a platform like Locals is obviously that a platform should have a very broad range of speech that it allows, including speech that maybe even the creators don't believe is inside what they would consider to be the Overton window. It's a very different thing than direct subsidization of particular opinions. So the Daily Wire would not have a host, would not pay a host who was staunchly pro-abortion. They would have no obligation to pay a host who is staunchly pro-abortion. And so when it comes to the hosts on the Daily Wire, obviously everyone is able to say what they want. Nobody ever comes to me and says, you can't say X. Nobody ever says that to Walsh. And no one ever said that to Candace. But the reality is that there is an Overton window at the Daily Wire. Obviously, there was a non-meeting of the minds. That's pretty much all I can say on this. And, you know, a lot of this has happened publicly. But you know, to the extent that the Daily Wire is in fact not a publisher, it is that is in fact not a platform, it is a publisher. That means that there is no moral obligation for the Daily, and there's no free speech problem with the Daily Wire saying we don't wish to pay a particular host, or that host saying I don't wish to work here anymore, because again, there's a parting of the ways that you know is not really open for discussion at this point. This week, NBC News deciding that Ronna McDaniel was too much for them. Ronna McDaniel can't work at NBC News. The sacred halls of NBC News must not be sullied by the former head of the RNC. Jen Psaki, however, can have a show on MSNBC despite being the press secretary for the White House 5 seconds ago. Right? The right's response to that is, I think, correct to say you guys have shut the Overton window too tight. But I think some elements of the right have basically said there is no Overton window. The Overton window should be completely exploded.
So the defense that he just gave there is the exact defense of Facebook, Twitter, and Google, Crystal, every single time that they take somebody down. We are not a platform, or we are a publisher, and publishers get to make editorial decisions. And yet, when it was flipped around, that we commonly understand that that is a form of censorship. It is obviously a term which is difficult to update to our modern laws, but we can at least understand that there are speech within Overton window, of which Shapiro has long advocated include him, but now is saying it can't and shan't include others. It seems that with Candace, you know, the other thing is hypocritical too, when he was talking about abortion, is they hired her with full well knowledge of who she was, how she is, and of her MO, her willingness to say and whatever they want, and they were happy with it for everything except whenever it came towards Israel.
That's right.
That's the other thing too, is I believe Jeremy Boring, who is the CEO of the organization The Daily Wire, had said, for example, he would never hire anybody who said that, quote, there was a genocide that was happening in Gaza. So it's like you have two lines at the Wire. You have abortion. I mean, that one's understandable to me, given the history of the organization. But now it's Israel. And it's like, hold on a sec. I thought this was an organization that covered American politics and was talking about American free speech, but here is just a little bit too much for Mr. Shapiro.
Well, I love how suddenly we're getting very nuanced. We're getting very parsy about this whole free speech conversation. And the comments about Ronna McDaniel, I mean, he's really got to work to try to justify that one, because it's very plain to see. All right, well, if, you know, you think it's justified to fire Candace because her views fall outside of your quote-unquote Overton window, then don't complain when NBC News fires Ronna McDaniel. Don't complain when there's a backlash over a Tom Cotton op-ed in the New York Times.
Exactly.
They're a publisher.
Exactly.
Perhaps this was outside of their Overton window, so it shouldn't be published. Don't complain. I mean, it's just so clear that the moment it came to this issue that's very core for him, suddenly everything he had said in the past is gone, and he's got to find 15 different ways to try to justify it, nuance it, craft this response to try to hide the fact that he has done a 180 when it comes to free speech. And just to pick up on what you were saying about they knew who Candace was, they were fine. And this question also over whether it was, you know, she was fired for genuinely anti-Semitic comments, which I think some of her comments you can say fall in the category of genuinely anti-Semitic in my personal opinion, or whether it was over her position with regards to Israel. And I think it's very clear because prior to getting hired, by the Daily Wire. She had said that thing about if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. That was no problem for the Daily Wire. She had defended Kanye, even as he's out there literally saying, I love Hitler. That was fine. No problem. But the minute that she has a critique of Israel and is willing to say, we are watching a genocide unfold, no. That's the line. And there were a couple other things that were really interesting as well. Because Sagar, he said that thing, oh, we didn't tell anybody. They can't, never told Candace she can't say anything. Yeah, well, most of these news organizations, MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, they're not overtly telling their staff, you can't say this about Trump or you must say this about Trump. But everybody knows what that quote unquote Overton window is. Candace knew where the Overton window was. She just wasn't willing to abide by those rules and strictures. And so just like at CNN with Mark Lamont Hill or at MSNBC with Mehdi Hasan, when they went outside of where they knew the lines were, they're gone. So you're just like them. That's the bottom line. You're just like them. Don't pretend like you're not.
You're exactly, and that's the other thing is you need to understand that if you are going to position yourself and make not even millions, probably hundreds of millions of dollars as a free speech organization whose entire purpose, by the way, is to blow up the Overton window. And you know what? In a certain sense, part of what I despise the most about that was he's like, well, we need to have some Overton window. I'm like, oh, now we need to have some Overton window. I'm like, by the way, I don't even believe in it. I think people should be able to say anything, even the craziest shit, because in general, that's how a lot of truth can emerge. You really have no idea in the actual moment, and I think that's actually very good for society. But now, all of a sudden, he does believe in, where things should be, and it's like, well, you don't see the hypocrisy on how that's used against you on transgenderism or any race and all these other issues that these guys have made whole careers, speaking out against. Here, they are lockstep with Jonathan Greenblatt and all of them over at the ADL, who they have criticized a million times. So in the words of Glenn Greenwald, that is what makes me absolutely sick. There's also some evidence, too, about how this all went down behind the scenes. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. This account, Censored Men. Don't know who this gentleman or who this woman is, but been doing some great work. They have actually put out, this was the email sent to employees at the Daily Wire informing them of the impromptu town hall that Jeremy Boring had organized. Employees were told not to bring their cell phones to the meeting. Independent contractors would not be allowed to attend. At the town hall, Daily Wire leadership attempted to smear Owens as an anti-Semite in front of their employees to justify their hiring. And you can see the evidence of that town hall, which is very clearly included there for the emails that were sent to their entire staff. Let's go to the next part here, please, because you can see, too, Candace is saying, quote, Ben, we agreed not to talk about this, but you are very much going on a public tour right now pretending not to talk about it, while you were very much talking about it. Would you like me to do the same? Part of the reason, Crystal, that Candace is so dangerous is that her husband is a son of a billionaire. And so let's just say she is not hurting for cash, and she truly is. She has, if there is such a thing as FU money, she's got it. So good for her. I hope she continues.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very revealing situation. And part of why it's so important is because there's always been this incredible blind spot on the right, even at the peak of their supposed free speech commitment when it comes to Israel and Palestine. And the number of people, this is like the number one issue that will get you canceled. Careers ruined. You have this whole warpath against students at Harvard led by Bill Ackman to try to destroy their career prospects for the entire rest of their lives for participating in protests and doing rally chants that he found to be objectionable. If you actually consistently care about free speech, you have to care about free speech when it comes to this issue, no matter what you think about Israel and Gaza and Hamas and what's happening right now, because it is about that principle of free speech. And so it is, it's sort of perfect that it comes down to Candace stepping out of the line when it comes to Israel, that's what it comes down to. And not just Ben Shapiro, but so many others on the right, including Dave Rubin, really showing their ass when it comes to their actual commitment to free speech, which only comes into play when it is people and speech that they find to be ideologically convenient for themselves. And I actually want to recall the comments that Rogan made in the context of Candace getting fired. And, you brought up abortion. Ben said, listen, we would never hire someone who's pro-abortion here. Okay, fair enough. That is a moral position, a philosophical moral position on a political spectrum. Rogan's point was basically, whether you want to use the term genocide or not, you have to be able to deal with the facts of what is happening here, which that's not an opinion, right? That's facts and reality. So I would even put this issue outside of, a sort of like political sphere of debate, because clearly you aren't even at the Daily Wire, you aren't even allowed to really discuss the facts of what's unfolding. You're certainly not allowed to call it a genocide when you have, UN Special Rapporteur, you have the ICJ saying it's plausible, you have numerous human rights organizations saying this. So if you can't even speak to just the facts and reality of what's happening, then you can't really call yourself a news organization. And no, I don't think that that's an appropriate, quote unquote, Overton window to have, where you, as a condition of working there, you have to deny reality that's unfolding in front of you. That's insane. And like I said, you can't call yourself a news organization there. You're just a propaganda outlet, and that's that.
Yeah, and that's fine. Be honest about that. But don't be raising hundreds of, or asking people, asking for hundreds of millions of dollars and buying Jeremy's razors and chocolates and all the other things that these people have done to position themselves as outside of this, specifically the job of trying to crack the so-called mainstream and to expand the Overton window to correctly, in my opinion, include some of the viewpoints that they have over there, and then experience and partake in the exact same censorship tactics that they did whenever you were speaking out. So I think that's really, really disgusting. I also refer people to Glenn Greenwald's commentary on the subject. It was absolutely fantastic.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.